This is Brad Montgomery. Welcome to the Successful, Interesting, and Awesome podcast, where I interview people who are, wait for it, successful, interesting, and awesome. Or at least one of those three. What's up, everybody? I've missed you. Hello, it's me. All right, so today is a good day. I'll tell you why it's a good day for me. Because I'm interviewing a very smart person who I'm kidding.
Come on.
Cool things.
Let's do this.
But it's a good day for you too, because this guy has a really interesting brain. He knows a lot about building a business, I'm going to ask him about screwing up a business. He knows about entrepreneurship. He knows about how to take shortcuts in order to do things faster than normal. And he knows at least a little bit about security and fraud. I have on the phone with us, John Sileo. Hey, John.
Hey, Redford. How you doing?
Oh, I'm so glad you said yes. I've been looking forward to this.
I know. It's so cool. What a fun interview compared to a lot of the technical stuff that I do.
Yeah. Let me ask you what you do. Instead of me doing it, can you give us your elevator speech? It's a test. This is a test.
Wow. My elevator speech. My elevator speech is, all of those headlines every day about governments being hacked and businesses being hacked and your iPhone being hacked. I'm the one that helps stop that. I teach companies, I teach people how to stop the loss of your data, whether it's through your Alexa, your Siri,
Right.
or your database.
Boring. Okay, I'm kidding.
You're telling me.
I am joking, and here's what people need to know. The reason I'm joking with you is everybody I know in the speaking business hates you a little bit because we are let's just take one person an example, me.
It's good to know, by the way, that people hate me. Yeah.
We're working forever in this very, very hard business, and then you come in with this fantastic topic, and then you apply to it your really crazy business acumen, and your business is on fire. So of course it's not boring, but everyone hates you because you're so topical. I hate you because the front page of the paper says hire John Sileo.
I'm glad to be hated then. There are a lot of headlines that keep the phone ringing and the emails coming in, and I'm grateful. I'm incredibly. You know what? I'm partially grateful because it means that bad stuff is happening to people, and that sometimes gets difficult always hearing that part of it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. All right, so you've got this wildly successful business, and part of your business is to tell your personal story, which is a sad story. This is when you had your identity stolen, and it was expensive and traumatic and horrifying and scary, and nothing fun about that story. So here you are in this very positive thing, building a business to support several people, yet you're at a kind of a negative. You're dealing with a negative story. You're like our peers who would talk about their surviving cancer or trauma or sexual abuse. How do you shake that off? When you come back to work and you're telling people, when people come to attack you, here's what you do. Come on, kids, give me a hug. Can you talk about that?
Well, I'm straight honestly, I'm friends with people like you.
Aww.
I have to surround myself with all kinds of goodness to kind of balance out the fact that I'm in the midst of crime and companies being destroyed and lives being destroyed all day long. The balance of my life is, hanging out with people who are smart and humorous and, like our fellow speakers and, doing some other stuff, leading retreats and doing more business oriented stuff, which I just dearly love.
Right. So how much of an issue is burnout with a job like yours? And would it be different if you had a different topic? Do you know what I'm asking? Like, if you were talking about butterflies and bumblebees, it might be easier.
Well, you and I mean, we have, for 15 years, we have parried back and forth on this, that I'm lucky to have a topic that kind of is constantly relevant, totally new, sells itself to some degree. And you're lucky because you've got something that really helps people lead happier, better lives. And I envy that. So to answer the question, there is some burnout. I work really hard
Hmm.
to find the positive in all of this and not just live constantly in the fear of it, because there are answers. I mean, that's one of the good things is you can take steps with your phone. Just I'm speaking on the individual, not the corporate level, but you can take steps that make a total difference in how you protect yourself and never have to go through what I went through. Getting people to do that, that's a whole different that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, what is that like? Because I'm guessing a doctor who gives good advice, knowing that that advice is not going to be followed, probably has a little bit of their soul die each time. And is that is that true for you? You're standing in front of an audience filled with bankers saying, "Do this, or you're in trouble," and you know they might not do it. Is that right?
Yeah, I know the companies don't do it because they come back to me afterwards for far more expensive engagements of how to recover from it, which is way less fun and way more expensive. And frankly, kind of one of the hardest things of all is the most minor, which is I've got all kinds of friends who ask for advice on this. I mean, like personal friends, close
Yeah.
friends, colleagues, speakers, and they ask for advice and then they don't do it. And then when it happens to them, I spend my weekend with them, walking them through it. And it's kind of depressing that people won't proactively prevent the heart attack, but once they have it, they want surgery right away.
Yeah. I don't know who you're talking about in that example. I don't know.
Not you.
Well, the problem with your advice is that it's straightforward, but it's a pain in the butt. For example, you've told me to lock down my credit, call up the credit reporting agencies and freeze my credit. And we did that. Thank you very much. Hopefully, bad guys have been thwarted. But as you know, that's such a pain. Like when you need the credit on again, you're like,
Yeah, we say it's a pain. Part of that's an excuse because it takes about 45 seconds to unfreeze it. So you'll drive 10 minutes to go to the Starbucks of your choice, but you won't take 45 seconds to unfreeze it. Most of it is truly, we think it's super hard, but in reality, it's truly not that hard. Changing a setting on your iPhone, again, you could do it. You could change a setting that we'll talk about in a minute. That still people find really good excuses to not do it. And it's a human nature thing. I mean, I'm not blaming the
right.
individuals. I do the same thing in other areas. It's just it makes for a frustrating, you can lead a camel to water, but
It's some large four-legged animal. I don't remember which one it is.
yeah, what is the
I
animal?
think it's you can lead a mountain goat. That's not it. Well, I do
How
want
do
to come
you get
back. Oh, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question though.
Well,
How do you, from your perspective of optimism and all of the goodness that you bring to companies, how do you suggest that people deal with that? Because you're the expert in this. I mean, I deal with difficult stuff all day long. What do I do?
yeah. I got two words for you. You're screwed. Okay, that's not true. Let's take that back. Well, it's so interesting because generally speaking, when I'm talking to an audience of people that are dealing with something difficult, they're going through astronomical change, like for example, pandemics or whatever. That's a short term
Mhm.
thing, and they think, oh, once I get over this hump of this bad thing, then things will get easier or better or more profitable or more good somehow. That doesn't answer people in businesses like yours that are kind of built on a negative story. Although even as I said that, John, I had an example. I just talked to on this very show a palliative care expert who works in a huge hospital that we're not allowed to name, but rhymes with the Shmi A, and they serve people called Schmetterins, something like that. So a massive palliative care expert, and she deals with people who are very, very ill. And she just talked about the joy it brings to bring peace to people. So finding those little micro moments of positivity feeds her all day long. And I don't know, is there any of that in there in your business? Are there
Yeah.
accounts like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so most of the reward of me doing my job is a company that doesn't get hit, or an individual who doesn't have their identity stolen or their privacy violated. And I do have moments, kind of both of external reinforcement, where people say, hey, listen, what happened to us, the $1.5 million we lost because of this did not happen
Yeah.
this year or this quarter or whatever. And that's really positive. And even more so, I know behind the scenes it's happening. So when a parent sets up, helps teach their child how to set up Facebook or a smartphone, and that kid isn't stalked because of it, or isn't, violated in some way, I know those things are happening if they have taken the steps, and that
Mm.
provides great reward, I have to say.
Yeah, well, I think we're answering your question. I didn't answer it. Yeah, it's funny because I think there's so many people in negative businesses that are some sort of risk prevention or loss prevention, or, they're like cops constantly dealing with people who are not, they're not our model citizens, but looking for those micro moments, those individual interactions that make a difference.
You know, I agree. And actually, Brian O'Malley, who is, a friend of ours and a fellow speaker, and has been a EMT and a fireman and a policeman and a
Right.
SWAT, and climbed Everest, and he's kind of seen the hardest things. Like, it makes cybercrime look soft, frankly. And his perspective is, and what allowed him to be to kind of approach all of this with calmness, is it just simply is what it is. When he comes up, upon an accident, it's not something that he can change or take back. He can do his part in it, but it's just how it is. And that's, in the digital world, that is my role, which is, data is lost. It's part of the side effect of the digital experience, and it is what it is. And we're here to help with that.
Right. Yes, and I'm not in that business, so I don't know, but also suspect that it takes effort because you mentioned, well, you try to surround yourself with people who are not super negative. I have a friend who's a cop, um, and he's very, very cynical. He is always going to be cynical. Do you feel like you fight cynicism because you're dealing with negativity in the business world?
Yeah, no question. I think I fight it because of what I see in the business world, what I see in people's personal lives, because I'm the I'm the person that they call when these type of things happen. I wish I would have printed out the email I got this morning, but a woman who has had her, because she pissed off a neighbor, had her entire business destroyed on social media, utilizing a network of people who do this for fun and destroy businesses, and has nothing, and needs help. So yeah, I mean, that's what I wake up to kind of every morning, is that. And it does change your perspective on human nature, because you're getting all of the one thing. I'm not hearing from the person in general who says, gosh, this didn't happen to me today. I didn't have,
Right, right,
my kid wasn't stalked based on the photo that they put on Instagram yesterday.
right.
I'm hearing about the kid that was stalked and taken. Um, does it make me cynical? Yeah. Do I fight against it every day?
Well, maybe you have tips for the rest of us because you are getting those emails so frequently, and you are having people say, "Oh, something horrible happened. I need help, John," all the time when the rest of us aren't. How do you translate that into advice?
Simply take some steps. I mean, do the things that most of us already know and just don't do. And you've heard them before, whether it's, you know, the average person not turning on two-factor authentication, that second form of
Right.
password that you have on your bank and your email and your Gmail and your Facebook. And, most people don't turn those on because they're a tiny bit inconvenient. They don't want to wait for the text or get into their app, but that solves like 90% of cloud hacking right there. So
Yeah, but
taking those little steps, huge.
but Mike, forgive me because I didn't phrase my question very well. What I meant to say is, based on the fact that you're able to live a very positive, successful life, in spite of the fact that you're faced with extreme negativity every day, how do you turn that into advice for those of us trying to live a life that's filled with joy, and we're trying to be successful, and it's, shoot, my life, our lives are overwhelming, and we don't have those emails coming in saying my neighbor hates me and sabotaged me.
I'm not sure I have got a fixed answer to that. I think I'm still in search of what you do with that. But I guess part of it is I look at the reality of I, what I could be doing. Do I love every bit of the topic that I'm talking about? No. Do I love the freedom and what it allows me in my life and the independence it gives me? And do I love the entrepreneurism of it? I do. And that's what I take really all my strength from. And I don't know if have you ever read Andre Agassi's memoir,
Yeah,
autobiography?
that's the one about tennis. Yeah.
You're so smart.
I
Did
have
you
not
did you
read
read
that.
it?
Yeah, he talks about like holding it. You got to grip that thing and other things too.
God, you're not even close. So what you would get if you were to actually have read that is that Andre Agassi hated tennis.
Oh,
He was raised from the age, like Tiger Woods, tiny age of playing tennis. And that's why he was very good. And he hated it. But he loved that it provided the ability for him to do other things in life, mainly to start these schools with his wife, Steffi Graf, for underprivileged kids, starting in Las Vegas and then moving outwards. So it was a vehicle to a life that he loved deeply. And that's definitely where I am. This is a vehicle and a topic that, because I lost everything to it, I lost, kind of my life as I knew it, my wealth to cybercrime. It's something that I can utilize for really good purposes in other ways.
hold on. I'm going to add to my to-do list tennis lessons. Obviously, that's the key right there. You heard it here first, people. Let me see if I can take
You're
you.
such a nut.
I'm going to take you to a little asterisk. When you're talking in front of an audience or in your books, you kind of mentioned very quickly that before the identity was stolen, you ran your parents' business into the ground. And it's kind of a joke and it's kind of self-deprecating. But like, what was the real story there? And I'm, in my spidey sense says you didn't really do this.
God, how much of the story do you want? I'll do the short version and you can ask questions.
Well, just give us the juicy one. We want the
The
juicy
juicy
version.
one is that I took over the family business, computer business, left the consulting world in San Francisco and moved back to Denver to take it over. It was struggling because big box stores had just come to town. This was right at the turn of the millennium. It was Y2K. We had programs failing. People actually behind the scenes had all kinds of accounting programs failing because they had been coded with 2-date years. So I invented with a very close friend at that point, a best friend, and my rock climbing partner, a business that solved that for small businesses. It served up accounting over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That business partner used my identity to embezzle from all of our clients. I faced the criminal trial, jail time, all of that. And that's what got me into the world of cybercrime. So did I destroy the business? I mean, I'm the one that took on the business partner and made those choices. So to some degree, yeah, I take responsibility, but it was because of fraud.
Yeah, but so I hear you, and I don't mean to diminish your pain, but that's not the same as you being you screwed up your computer business because you were an idiot. You were a victim in that one.
I was a victim in that one, but there were signs that I should have paid attention to, like almost every business who doesn't pay attention to, signs of fraud or of cybercrime. And that part is my responsibility. I have to own that part of, we were so successful so quickly, something was not right. And I ignored that for the sake of money, and that ended up biting me.
Yeah, ignoring that for the sake of money. I'm guessing that's a phrase that lots of people say.
Yeah. Yeah, those ones are in my inbox as well.
All right. So, what were you doing in the Bay Area? What kind of consulting?
Management consulting. My claim to fame was for a I worked for Mercer, which was a management consultant like McKinsey, only luckily not in the news lately for bad things. And uh, Bank of America and Sprint were my big clients, and I figured out how to help them save hundreds of millions of dollars by jettisoning non-profitable, under-profitable customers, which was very profitable for the companies and very unfulfilling for me.
You said, if you lay off all those people.
No, in this case, and so in the credit card world, that Bank of America was losing. Gosh, I shouldn't even be saying these names. This large credit card banking company was losing all kinds of money on their profit on their highest wealth customers because high wealth customers pay off their bills.
Hmm.
So what they needed to do was get rid of all of the people that they spent all kinds of money fawning over and servicing and having special lines. The 1K people were super unprofitable. So by jettisoning 150,000 billionaires essentially or multimillionaires who always paid their bills but who required higher levels of service, they could be way more profitable. That was costing them, upwards of $180 million a year. So it was finding ways to make companies more profitable by getting rid of service levels, and that was just totally unfulfilling to me.
So I'm assuming Mercer loved you when you left, and they were sad. They're like, "What? You're like, you just did. You're leaving."
They didn't. I mean, they loved me, but they could have filled me in with any analyst who did it. And the reason they didn't love me is because I was so insistent on working my schedule, not the 80-hour work week or 80 to 100-hour work week. Because I wouldn't travel to the degree they wanted. I was a problem child. I was an entrepreneur already then, and
Uh,
I did not like my discoveries and smarts going to benefit their customers and the executives' pocketbooks. So no, they actually were probably really happy to get rid of me.
yeah. So you're like under the category of difficult to manage,
Yeah.
right? But it's worked out for you. All right. So
Oh yeah.
one of the things I love about you is you have a high tolerance for risk. And I am really curious as to where that tolerance for risk meets confidence and like how in the world did you get that personality type that made you say, "Oh, here's a great job for a great company that I could go forever with if I just follow the rules." And you said, "No, I got all kinds of things to do." So you computer business, built a speaking business, now you're running leadership retreats. You're not afraid to start new things. Where does that confidence come from? That feeling of, I got this.
Gosh, I've never thought directly about it, but probably from the fact that I starting businesses in junior high so that I could do the things I wanted to do. I started a mowing business and it was too much work. So I hired my friends to do the mowing and I made the money. And that allowed me to go to a great college and pay my own way through college where I sold t-shirts and did laundry you know, for people who could afford it. And um, so it's just always been a part. It's part of what my parents did their whole lives. They were entrepreneurs, still are entrepreneurs. And then I think when you face the prospect of going to jail, I mean, when you're sitting in the courtroom and they're going to choose whether you or the person next to you serves a 10-year jail sentence and you don't do it, your view of risk changes radically. And taking a business risk and borrowing some money and being smart about it is a completely different thing.
Oh, kind of. Your answer kind of reminds me. People who have had really tough health crises say similar things like, "Man, your perspective is way better after you go through this misery." You're saying you're looking at jail
Yeah.
time, you don't go. It makes every day better.
Yeah, and then, kind of as a safety net under that, I happen to have a wife who encouraged me to take the risk and said, if it doesn't work, we'll sell the house, we'll move into a tiny little apartment, we'll be just fine. And I think that was the most empowering thing that happened to me, was the fact that we didn't need to have what we had had wealth wise, trip wise, possession wise in order to be happy. And God, I can't say enough for having a support crew that
Yeah.
makes risk less risky.
Well, let's talk more about support. You know that in my business, I talk to people who want to hear about the people side of performance and the people side of business. People side of the performance, that might be something you thought of. Um, who who encouraged you? So I like, for example, I have a story of a nightclub owner who took a chance on me, and really when I was just kind of good but not great, he really gave me a break and said, like, I see it in you. You're fine. You got this. Do you have people in your life like that? I'm still trying to break through to what makes you so confident. Like, do you remember,
Um,
was there a mentor or a coach or I don't know, someone you really looked up to that kind of looked at you and said, "Oh, John, you've got the magic ingredient. You're going to be, you've got this."
yeah, yeah. Now that I think about it, there's probably two or three. Uh, Certainly, my dad is probably the primary one who kind of did that himself, and so it was just a natural part that that when I wanted to do something, I mean, he gave me a sign when I was he hand calligraphied a sign when I was probably 10 that said, if you want to and you think you can, go ahead, give it a shot. Kind of his, motivational wall poster. And it meant a lot to me because it was at a time when it was actually a little older, that it was a time when I was making a big decision in my life as to how big of a risk I was going to take in going to university. And that attitude was just something that I grew up with. The other was a professor at college who said, listen, I was the chief justice on a moot court that was kind of a big deal at my school. And so I was one of a class of 100 in a school of 6,000 of like overachievers. And
We're
after,
talking about Harvard. Harvard people never say the name of their own school. Just saying.
yeah, so we're talking about Harvard, which I loved dearly. It was just an awesome place for me, and because of the people I met. And anyway, he said after this experience, you were an okay chief justice, but I would love to have you run a business for me. And he recognized in me something, kind of a passion and a love. And we started a business together that we then sold to the Harvard Business School a couple of years later and made all kinds of money on. And
Wait,
it was just his belief, like that was enough. It was just one person saying, I believe in you. He may not have had any actual belief in me, but his saying it like totally did it.
yeah. How old was he? So you're a college kid. How old was this mentor, this professor?
He was probably 45.
Oh, so pretty young. But for you
Yeah.
also, you saw him as like, that professor told me I should run a business. So what was the business?
It was executive education. So kind of what I've come back full circle to. We sold programs to kind of a Harvard endorsed program to executives from Thailand, Pakistan, Beijing, bring them over, charge a lot of money. I would be the person that would introduce them to professors at the Harvard Business School and med school and local businesses in Boston and incubators, and they would make relationships, and we'd have great dinners, and it was a ton of fun. And it competed against the Harvard Business School executive ed program. So rather than do that, they just decided to buy it. It was a fun business, and it's what I'm starting kind of to do with the retreats.
How old were you when that business was sold?
It's right before I moved to New Zealand, which was 93. So I was what, 20, 21, 22.
That is heady stuff.
It was pretty cool. It was a great experience. I had a tiny little office in the basement of one of the Harvard houses,
Mhm.
and God, it was fun. Nobody's ever even asked me. I don't think my family knows that I did that stuff. I mean, like my wife's family, and certainly my parents did, but
I think you need to change your website. John Sileo has done amazing things and sold a business to the Harvard Business School. I'm
that
in.
was a good one. That was a good one.
So you mentioned there were three people that encouraged you. Your dad, this professor that said, "I can see you running a business." There was a third person, Mike. Do you remember who you were thinking of?
Yeah, Brad Montgomery. So
The quality
when
just
I was
dipped.
first in this business, and didn't know anybody, didn't know speakers, didn't know anybody, and I went to a speaker conference, and I had a cab ride with Brad Montgomery sitting right there, and we became friends. And I asked him to go to lunch after that, and he told me about the speaking business, and he watched my speech, and he told me where I was being exceptionally stupid. And you've done that all throughout my career. So, I mean, it feels like, in this, it feels like a self-serving question, but you truly are the person
Oh,
who made me think I could do it in this business. And there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, you'll never do it." I mean, you and I both know the person who said, "Oh, identity theft and data security, like that's, you'll never, you'll never make that work."
it'll go nowhere.
Yeah.
You should be a motivational speaker and tell people about butterflies and bumblebees.
Pick happy.
All right, so picture that the power of that professor looking in your young man eyes saying, "You've got it. I see something. I see greatness within you." Have you done that for others? Because other people look to you with that same, you've got that same gravitas. Are you
No.
strategic about that? No.
Oh gosh. Strategic is probably overdoing it. Do I try and give back? Definitely. I think mentoring other speakers, sitting down for a lot of coffees with people who wanted to become speakers and helping them see what they needed to do. Yes, I've done a ton of that, serving on boards to do that. Probably the thing where I've done it most is sitting down with friends who have business ideas or already have a business and are trying to figure out what to do, and doing that,
Yeah.
but not to the degree that like an Earl Room in our life or a Cavett Robert or Scott Friedman has done. That's part of my future self.
I suspect you've heard this a lot. Coming from you, John or Mr. Cilio, that means so much. Yeah.
Yeah, in different forms.
So who are the people that told you that? Because I'm thinking I've seen there and I've been there when you were training people and giving people tactical, strategical advice. I are smart, and but I'm trying to channel that professor saying, "I see this in you." That was an emotional thing. That was it wasn't how to build a business.
Yeah. So what's the question?
I'm just curious. It, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I suspect there have been people that you have not just given that advice to, but said, "I see greatness in you," and they feed on that for another decade, and it helps them achieve difficult things. And I know that you do that to your kids, but I'm wondering if you have had experiences where you do that with other people. And
Yeah, definitely. I think a byproduct of people seeing, the entrepreneurial life and the way that I've been able to manage, you know, the hours that I work and the time off that I get and how my day looks. I get asked a lot about that. And yeah, I think I have shared that with people. Like, you've got what it takes.
yeah,
And I don't think it necessarily has to do with how good their idea is. It has to do with how hard they're willing to work, because it changes as you go anyway. So yeah, I can think of specific people who probably have a business because partially because I had faith in the fact that they could do it.
Yeah, that's heady. I think that's heady stuff, right? And I think it's something you grow in. At least from my perspective, I feel like it's something I've grown into. That gradual realization that because of my age and because I don't look like I'm 20 anymore, and because of whatever successes I've had, people tend to give compliments from me a little extra credit than they might have given me when I was younger and had done fewer things. You've got that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I mean, you told me, God, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we kind of have a responsibility. Uh, you know, what we're doing, we actually have a fair amount of power because of the credibility we've developed and the network we've developed. And yeah, I definitely, I feel that. And the place where it's really fulfilling for me and living that even more than speaking is with kids. So the kids that, because there's a strong Harvard alumni network, for example, that I get to hear their ideas and encourage them, and they don't need much. I mean, they're they're looking for kind of any rope to cling to and climb, and they do. I love the kid aspect of it, and specifically, and where my energy is. I love helping develop women leaders, of being an ally to women leaders, specifically in the girls leadership movement. So that's a cause that I do a ton with. That's something that I want to do more in the retreat space. Is I have daughters, and I see the inequities in the business world between men and women, and um, even racially and so forth. So when I help in that realm, that deeply fills me up.
It is so. I'm so interested in that topic, and it's all related really to confidence because we talked about your confidence to start out new things, but somehow when you have the confidence that you kind of have a very a swagger. You're not an ass because sometimes swagger means ass, but sometimes swagger means that guy's got it, and somehow taking advantage of that to do even more good. And I don't mean financial good or strategic training. I'm talking about emotional support. I still feel like I'm articulating the question in my head, but I sense you're a rock star at that.
No, I wouldn't say. I'd say I'm in the studio practicing. My personal mission is to create and share energy to make the world a better place. Or the way I like to phrase it is to leave the campground better than I left it, because I love the outdoors. And I think I think I'm reaching kind of a point in my career and in my life and at my age where that's becoming more important. I wouldn't say it's been super intentional to this point. I think it's happened. It's kind of been a byproduct of what I've done. But that feeling, that question that you're trying to codify is is something I can tell is coming in my life. I know that I want to do more of that. I want to have
Yeah.
that kind of effect on people, to help them find what they have energy in, and manifest that.
Well, and I think part of the reason this new-ish business of you leading leadership retreats is going to kill it is not just because you have business knowledge to share, but because you're going to be able to say like, "Yeah, I get it. You're fine. Well done. You've got this."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And by the way, it has to be honest. I don't think
Oh
it
yeah,
can be gratuitous that you just say that to anybody, because uh, I'm not a believer in that you make it so by saying it. I think people have to have truly the desire to work hard at it, and that's
yeah.
usually what I am looking for when I make those type of suggestions. Is you can have somebody who knows nothing and is willing to go and give 50 free speeches to get started. That's way better than the person, way better off to me in terms of making it, than the person who's naturally eloquent.
I am going to follow up on this about whether or not the compliment has to be true. But here we got a question from Palmo. Palmo, I miss you. What's your thoughts on the fear of success, or is it just another side of fear of failure? Ooh, aren't you clever, Palmo?
Wow,
Fear,
that's a
fear of
great.
success. So while you're thinking, my kids have that. We're they're afraid that if they do really well in this class or that activity or whatever, then that'll raise expectations and more people will look at them and pressure, and it's just not worth it. So maybe Palmo's onto something. Fear of success. Let's put it up there again so you can see it. Do you have any of that? Like, I can't even picture you being afraid of success because I just think you're like, oh, I see that. I'm going to go get it. And then you always do.
I think my biggest fear of success is probably in, to use the term that gets used a lot in business, is of going big. Um, because I feel like a lot of the people that I know who have gone big, meaning make more money at it, more famous at it, whatever, have compromised a lot of their actual values to do it.
Mm.
And I fear being sucked into that world. And, we kind of live in a vortex where people are super successful and they sell all kinds of stuff. And I fear who I become. And I've seen who I become when there's a lot of money involved. That's what blinded me the last time. So I'd say there is a fear of success. And also, I don't like to fail either. I've done more of it probably than the average person. I've lost more money, failed more businesses than most entrepreneurs, and I don't like it. It's not a pleasant feeling, but I've also learned how to do it less and less as I've gone along.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of fear of success? Personally, you, Brad, not your kids.
Yeah. It's funny because as you were talking, I was trying to process the question and I'm not sure I get it because right now I don't have a fear of that. But I do know what you're talking about. You and I have talked endlessly about if you scale your business and have, if you have 30 people working for you or 130 people working for you, you make more money, but dang it, that is way more work. And is it worth it? You could do that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I have that in me. I don't have any leadership skills. I've never done anything like that, but you could do that in a minute, but you're choosing not to. That says volumes to me.
yeah. I've made conscious choices not to go big like that, and there's loss of status and credibility and people in your life because of it.
Right.
But I'm always asking, why am I doing this? And for me, the answer is I want to spend good time with my very closest friends, my daughters, my wife, and in nature and in
Yeah.
adventure and travel. And I can do that without making millions of dollars.
I think for me, it's a sign of growing up. Meaning, when I remember as a young man, I'd see people with these business models, and I'm like, I can do that. Let's go. And then I finally grew up and realized I don't want to do that. And somehow I'm at peace with that. Like I want to work for myself. I want to work as much as I can by myself. I want to be in charge. And I don't like managing. I don't like HR. I don't like
Right?
managing.
I'm with you. I agree. And have I ever wondered, well, is that just an excuse for not going big? Or is that really, really what I want? But when I sit down and am still and think about what I want, very little of it has to do with having more. I think the having more thing is a siren luring you to the side of the river. It just,
Mm.
I don't know, it doesn't carry much for me. And I have a lot. I'm not saying that I want to live a life of poverty. I live very well. I just don't necessarily need to scale to live more well in the ways that I'm already satisfied
Right.
with.
Yeah, it's like, would that yacht make you happier? If you owned a yacht, would that change your life? Oh, well, first of all, I'd like to try. And second, and second, I doubt it.
It's better just to have friends who have yachts and to be a good friend so that they invite you over to hang out on their yacht and then you don't have to take care of that toilet that's broken.
Right. But I think for some people, and I think you're one of them, a canoe in the backwoods somewhere, might be even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, nature's free. I mean, I'd just as soon snowshoe, which is once you've bought the $100 shoes, snowshoes is, as
Right.
satisfying as skiing that costs you $150 and a night's lodging. So yeah, I'd rather just get out into the backcountry.
I think I've just snowshoed for my first time this season, and so fun. Except for there is no sliding downhill. When you walk up, you got to walk right down. There's no. there's that is a good thing about skiing. All right, so I promised you I was going to go back to whether or not compliments have to be genuine, and part of me says, of course they do, because people can sense inauthenticity, and it just cheapens anything that you say that is true. Yet, the other side of me thinks, nah, because I have two examples of people who said a lot to me. When I became a certified speaking professional, which you are, I got a fax. Let that soak in. From Nito Cobain, this rock star speaker in our world. And I'm sure his secretary sent it, but it said, congratulations, you're on the right track, you're whatever. It probably was one sentence.
Right.
And I know now that Nito Cobain didn't know me, and he just gave me a compliment. And I'm telling you, John, I took that piece of paper and I unrolled it and I flattened it and tucked it to my wall. It meant a great deal. And it took years before I kind of realized, oh, Nito didn't know me, but dang it, it was still valuable. And another example is, you mentioned Earl Room. Earl Room is a leader in the speaking world in Colorado, especially, and a leader in magic and a leader in youth leadership. And as a young magician, he came up to me all the time and said, that's great, Brad. Wave that flag, wave that banner. And I remember talking to him and saying, Earl, could you coach me on this thing? I really want your expertise. And all he said was, it's great, Brad. Can't wait to see what's next. It's great. And there was a piece of that fed me. Even though I sensed a little bit of bull, it still fed me. And so now, given those examples, what do you think? Is there any room for fudging a compliment?
I think it's kind of like most things. I don't think it's black or white. I think there's a huge area of gray. And for me, when I'm saying it's important that it be authentic, that's not for them, that's for me. Oh. So in order for me to feel good about it, I want it to be authentic. Now, does Nito believe so much in NSA and the CSP designation that he believed what he was saying? Yeah, I think he does. I think he wholeheartedly believed that. So to me, that was authentic. Was it individualized? No. Did it need to be? No. But a gratuitous attaboy, attagirl doesn't carry the power of saving it for the ones that are real. Debate, argue, tell me, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because I'm not totally sure I believe that.
Discuss.
I'm not sure I totally believe what I'm saying. I'm just getting it out there.
Well, because I think generally speaking, you can always find a legit compliment. Like let's say there's a young entry-level speaker or magician or comic or just human. There's always something that you can give them that's legit, right?
Yeah, agreed.
But also, I don't mind pushing it a little bit because I channel Earl. But when Les Brown says, there's greatness within you, he doesn't say it that way. He says it so much better. He doesn't define what greatness means, but he allows them to think it through and like, Les sees something in me. He says, I've got it. Sometimes that changes people.
Well, I guess my answer to that is you are a phenomenally good podcast host, and I think you're gonna rock this thing.
There's greatness within me. Aw.
There is. Yeah, how nice to talk about these things.
This podcast, John, has been fun for me because it really has just been an excuse to ask people, even people I know, questions I don't normally ask. Fun. Like, why is that not a good day?
that is a good day. And it's really cool to talk about these things that we don't have worked out. I mean, I don't have a pitch for this like I would if we were talking about, my business services. I'm
Right.
not trying to sell something, and I like having a conversation that is about this stuff that we figure out together as friends and colleagues and everything.
Right. I think your job, big corporations call you in and say, help us manage this terrible thing that is going to happen. People are going to attack us through the internet. But part of what you've taught me is that it's a people problem, not a tech problem. And to that end, you are still very similar to me in that you're encouraging people saying, you can do it. It's hard, but you got this.
Totally. That is my primary job, is to let them know you do not have to live in the fear, because when you're the one that takes the steps, you're not the one that gets attacked. Yeah, I would say, most accurately, motivational securityist, is what I'm doing. Is this is doable.
Motivational securityist.
I don't know. I just made that up.
No, but it works. I like that. Yeah, and do your clients know that when they hire you? Do they realize, okay, we need information. We have an information gap, and John can help us with that. But also, we need someone to tell our people that they can be empowered and be successful. Do they know that?
Absolutely. That's
Oh,
what separates me from my competitors. Is it's not completely boring, dry technical stuff, and B, it's not about the fear. It's about the potential the potential for safer, more profitable companies.
mm.
And yeah, they almost universally, they know that coming in, because I get most of my speeches from people having seen me in other speeches. So they know what I'm doing. I don't advertise. I don't do much social media.
Right.
It's from speaking.
You get most of your clients from people who've seen you. That's telling. And it also makes me feel bad because so many of my clients are first time clients. Curses. I should maybe move up my game a little bit. All right. I've seen you on stage. I've seen you present virtually. You are a rock star. And I am a little jealous of the fact that your topic is so fantastic, because I don't think there's any organization who doesn't need you. But there's a lot of people who do what you do that aren't any good. And you're a stud. So well done, you. Congratulations. You've worked hard.
Thank you. And I believe you.
You have greatness within you, John Sileo. I don't know if you're going to ever be a good Chief Justice, but still, you got other skills.
I should call Professor Perry and thank him for setting me off of the law course and onto the business course, because he single-handedly, this is the same thesis. He was also my thesis advisor, who at junior dinner, we all got together for junior dinner, said to me, I said, should I be writing a thesis? And he was like, are you going to go to graduate school or law school? And then said, you probably shouldn't go to law school. And said, don't write a thesis. Enjoy your senior year. Just have fun. And that was great life advice. I got to call this guy and tell him. He teaches at the University of Texas now. So
I triple dog dare you to call him.
I will. H.W. Perry. Yeah, I will call him. He was, yeah. Do you ever forget how influential, or like never consider how influential some people have been in your life till somebody asks you that? Like, I hadn't even thought about that for 20 years.
Well, it does make me think who I should be calling. Who was that professor in my life that made a difference?
Yeah.
And actually, I just answered my question. I had a drum teacher that I'd need to call, because that guy, John, it was similar to you in law school. I wanted to be a pro drummer. And this guy knew I had the bug, and I'm a good musician. And he looked at me in the eyes when I told him that and said, look at me. I'm teaching in a strip mall. I'm with you instead of my wife and child. I work in a drum store in the day. And this weekend, Brad, where do you think I'm playing? I'm playing country music. Country music for drummers is that's not fun. But, paid bills. He's like, and he knew I idolized him.
So align that with the fact that he didn't encourage you to follow your passion. I mean, he did just the opposite. He was honest with you about that, right? That's just the,
Yeah, but
I don't know if
also I
it's the
think
opposite, but it's complementary of what we were talking about.
also what he said though is you have other skills and channels, and you can be a fantastic amateur. Like he didn't tell me to quit music. He just told me maybe I. It's hard to be a full-time pro.
Right.
Okay, I'm calling my guy. You're calling your guy. Pinky
Good.
promise. Do it or pinky promise.
Pinky promise.
All right. Um, I do. I gotta ask you one more question I didn't plan on. So, I went to Brown University, and when I tell people I went to Brown University, they go, "Oh, really? What is that?" And I'm like, "It's an actual Ivy League." And they go, "What?" And I say, "Like Harvard and Yale, it's an Ivy League." And they're like, "No, it's not." You, nobody is impressed with Brown University, but you went to Harvard, and the way you handle it, I know it is a Harvard thing. Like no one wants to be that pompous jerk who drops Harvard into every third sentence, and we know those people. I know we do. What's your take on that? You mentioned that you went to college, and you mentioned your university years before. I kind of tease you about it. What's your take on? It's such a fantastic credential, but also it could push you away from people you're talking about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are, well, first of all, did you see the last season of The Bachelorette with Tasha and the Harvard guy on there who was the quintessential prick?
I didn't see it.
You didn't see it. You should watch it. It was a great season. So my opinion is it's not something that I bring out in conversation any more than somebody who goes to CU Boulder brings out in conversation. If somebody asks, I tell people I'm not embarrassed to have gone there. I don't think that I'm have some gift, that I'm a gift for having gone there. It was a good college. It fit well for me. I loved the experience. It was great to get out of my little town in Colorado and go to the East Coast. But I also know it well enough to know it wasn't that different from what you had or the person watching this had. It was just a college experience, and that was what was cool about it. So, I love the place. It does not confer any
Yep.
special powers, though, I will tell you that.
Well, a lot of people, who couldn't get into Brown went to Harvard and love it. So good for you. It's it's the total opposite, of course. When I
I
was
want to
young,
ask you a question, though, about going there.
yeah.
Did you go to while you were there? And I know that I'm probably a little older than you, but did you go to the was it Squeeze concert, or was it the Meatloaf concert that was at Brown? Like I came down and I went to that.
Oh no way. Wait, what year did you graduate from Harvard?
I don't tell exact dates because of what I do. It's used against me, but
Because then I'll know your age and know more about you.
yeah, exactly. But early 90s.
Okay. So I'm older than you are, and no. No, I don't remember that.
No?
Although Meatloaf could have come, and I was a jazz snob at the time. I probably it would, of course I would go now, but at the time I would have gone Meatloaf, please. Does he swing? I
Well,
don't think so.
did you see Sonny Rollins at the second largest unsupported marble dome in the world?
No, which dome is that?
That is the Providence, Rhode Island dome, which is right next to Brown, second largest unsupported marble dome in the world, next to the one I think in Rome. And Sonny Rollins played there in 1989. It's
Wow.
awesome.
Adding something in my to-do list. Study dome trivia. Got it? I didn't know. That's
It's the only fact I know about Providence, Rhode Island.
very impressive thing. We were back to the, you mentioned the guy in The Bachelorette was a prick. When I was a young adult, I knew this guy who would always say, "Oh, I went to a small liberal arts college in New Haven, Connecticut." And then, he just laid it out there like a pregnant pause, and then people went, "Oh, bite me." Okay, what college was it? Was that Yale? Oh, yes, it was Yale.
Yes, it was.
Oh man, it's amazing you were able to fit that in. I used to wear it. when you're on the East Coast and you go to Brown, it's kind of cool because people have heard of Brown. When you're in Denver, Colorado, no one cares. I would
It's
wear
just
these
a color.
sweatshirts that say I had a red sweatshirt I loved, and it said Brown. It had the logo, the Latin thing, whatever that's called, Brown. And I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm so awesome, very proud of it. And people would go like, that's funny because your sweatshirt's red and it says Brown. That's hilarious, Brad. You're such a guard. I'm like, that's hurting my feelings. Can you pretty please teach us one thing to do with our phones, or one tip that we can actually use? Because I promised my listeners.
Yeah, definitely. This is one that haven't even written about or published yet because
Ooh.
it's still kind of brand new. So this is the first time ever revealed, and you may have read about it, but Apple in their 14.4 release of iOS, since you've been talking about Apple, I assume you're an Apple user, has instituted a new feature that is going to drive Facebook crazy, if not out of business, and that is a non-tracking feature. So Apple, which loves your privacy because it drives more business for them, they don't want to sell your information to others, has instituted this new thing called app tracking transparency, meaning Facebook can no longer talk to your Fitbit app, that can talk to your Google app, that can talk to your map, put all of those things together, and then they sell it as to advertisers. So Apple has said, we're going to cut off that unless you, Brad, say that we can do that. So in your settings under privacy, now first you have to update to 14.4, and you do that for security reasons because there were three major holes in the previous version of the operating system that let people right in the back door.
Well, that's
So
the
you
first thing.
update for that.
I've been late on updating, so you're saying get on it.
On 14.4, on all of these updates,
All right.
Unless you're running software like on a computer where you can't update until you know that the software is updated, on your phone, automatically update because it's always about security.
Okay.
So you update to 14.4, and then you go in there, and where you've already been, because I know that you do this stuff, is location tracking, and you've set all the location tracking basically to only when I'm using the app or never, rather than the default, which is always. Right above that or right below it is this app tracking, and you turn it off. If it's not already off by default, you turn it off, and that doesn't let Facebook share information or glean information from all of these other apps. It's a great privacy tool, but you got to go turn it on.
It's called app tracking.
App tracking, yeah.
So general preferences, then privacy, then locations.
Yeah. Right? So settings, privacy, and then in privacy, I'm going to make sure there's nothing showing on here. Let's see if I can get this. Normally, I would be on a computer.
Location.
See that?
I see it.
Tracking.
Tracking. So it's that yellow icon.
And when you go to tracking, you're going to get this little thing right there that says allow apps to request to track. So you don't necessarily want that. You just want them to not track you.
Right.
Frankly, just to cut to the chase now. If you want really targeted advertising so that when you type in donuts on your map, you get an ad in Facebook for donuts right after that. If you want that kind of tracking, then you leave those on. Most people don't want it because they type in things like bankruptcy and pornography and all kinds of things that you don't want other people knowing.
Yeah, but I really love donuts. All right.
Have you ever been to Voodoo Donut?
Okay, yeah. And here's what I think. Very beautiful, expensive donuts that are just like donuts.
Well, that are also so rich, like you can't consume them.
I find donuts to be that way. When I was young, I loved donuts, and now I kind of feel like, it's too sugary. And yet, I got a sweet tooth. I love sugar.
I haven't found that. I still can eat a whole box of Lamar's donuts.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, if I had a dozen glazed donuts right now, how many would you eat?
3.
Okay.
If I had milk or unsweetened coffee. It's the only time I have unsweetened coffee.
Yeah, there's nothing. I would drove by a Mr. Donut the other day and went, I'll be dang, it's still open. That
What's
just
that?
feels like a time out of the past.
God, that's like 50s and 60s, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where I went in high school. My high school friends and I realized, because where do you go when you're a kid? You can't go to a bar. Restaurants are expensive. Mr. Donut, you can afford that. A lot of time spent at donut houses.
Donut houses. We went to the Tenneco station on the corner, 32nd Youngfield.
A gas
It was a
station?
gas station. That's because think of it. We didn't have phones. Like the only way that we could coordinate while at school was to have a place. So it'd be like, I'll see you at the Tenneco at 7. And we would
Ah,
all go to this gas station. And that's where the parties started. That's where you found out everything. It was the
it
central place.
and it happened outside of the station. You didn't go in and stand by the Slurpee machine.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not
Things are
saying the
different.
donut house is better than the outside of a gas station, but you just might consider it.
Yeah, but you get fat. I would have if I met at a donut place, I would have a donut every time.
We were 17. There's no such thing
True.
as body fat for a 17-year-old boy.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Thank you for saying yes. I'm going to ask you my last question because I always do. John Sileo, Hall of Fame speaker, security expert, entrepreneur, leadership, team building yogi. What gives you hope?
My kids,
Hmm.
my daughters and their generation, having just been through this political season and seeing what my girls did to contribute to that, and kind of in a bipartisan way to get out vote, and maybe a partisan way, but um and the poet, who's the poet at the
Gordon, right?
Gorman, Amanda
Gorman.
Gorman, like that gave me hope. That gave me hope like I haven't felt in a long time. I think partially politically, but just societally, like, wow, if that's who's going to be leading our country as I retire, like I'm super happy. And that's how I feel about my girls every day. So yeah, I think that the coming generations really give me great amounts of hope.
Aw. When's the last time you told your kids that? That I know you told them you love them.
I tell them that all the time.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Your children have greatness within them.
Literally, I could show you a text from this morning where I wrote that message in completely different words.
Because I'm just curious, can you tell us what words you use?
You want to know? Actually, no, I don't know. Let me see if it's how private it is.
Just read it to us. You don't have to show it to us.
No, I'm not going to show you. I got to find it.
No. What's funny because
Um,
I think all of us encourage kids, and sometimes it's helpful to hear other language because, like, I tend to say the same thing to my children, and if I were to change a language, they would notice.
yeah, I can't find it, but essentially, this has been a hard road for kids our age.
Mm.
The isolation. Oops, shut up, Siri. The isolation, the all of that, and I just simply told my girls what an amazing job they have done dealing with a situation that could make them bitter, and they've used it to grow and to change who they are, and I'm just super proud of them. So, and by the way,
Ah,
I have girls that tell me the same thing back. I mean, I get that in return.
when I hug, especially my youngest kid, she's adorable because she loves it, and she gets really stiff. So I tease her about it, like, relax. It's our seems to be our thing. Thank you for being. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for teaching us about tracking. Thanks for your thoughts on entrepreneurship and risk taking, confidence.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, for doing this, and for being the kind of friend that would put this type of stuff together.
You're a star. Stay with me, John Sileo. Everybody, thanks for being here.